on live now.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn with Action Coach here in Birmingham. It's certainly cold where I am. I hope you're keeping safe, well, and warm. It's great this lunchtime to have Tom Priest, one of my colleagues from Action Coach. It's a Lunch and Learn first. We've got two Action Coach clients or colleagues on the phone at the same time. So welcome, Tom. Good to have you with us.
Afternoon, Steve. Great to be here, mate.
Good, no, it's good to have you with us, Tom. And I've particularly asked you to come along this Lunch and Learn, Tom, because we want to talk a bit about networking in a few minutes and just get your views and perspective on how networking can benefit all of our organisations right now. But just before we get on to that, just for those who are joining us for the first time, just want to say a very big welcome to you. It's great to have you with us this Lunch and Learn. We're broadcasting on 3 platforms this lunchtime, so you may well be logged into the Zoom, and if you are, it's great to have you with us on Zoom. And please just put any questions and answers in the Q&A box on Zoom, and we'll monitor that as we go along. We're also broadcasting live on Facebook and LinkedIn, which is fantastic. You may well be listening to us on either of those social media platforms. If you are, it would be great to know where you are listening to us from. Over the last 12 months, we've gone everywhere from Canada to France and every part of the UK pretty much. But we are Action Coach Birmingham, so we'd just love to know where you're listening to us from and how far our reach is today. If you have any questions, any comments, please put them in the Q&A or the comments box on the social media platform you're listening to us on, and we will monitor that, and we'll try and get out and respond to your comments and questions throughout the webinar. But if we don't, we'll certainly respond to you afterwards, either myself or Tom. But Tom, back to you. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for giving up your lunch for us today. I'm sure you can get back to your whatever. Was it a curry or was it a sandwich today, Tom? What are you having?
Oh, it was a nice salad, Steve. You know, you don't get this physique with having a curry, you know what I mean?
I wouldn't know, Tom. And I'm not going to give away anything about your love of pork scratchings, Tom, but we'll move on fairly swiftly. I've not even got to my lunch yet. I'm homeschooling. And as I said to you a minute ago, I just realised I'm sitting here with my red pen. I've just been marking the children's maths homework. But so I'll get my lunch once we've finished. But today we're going to sit and just have a chat about networking. It's so important, isn't it, Tom? We've all been well, it's almost a year now, isn't it? We've been in this lockdown of various different kinds and restrictions, depending on where you are in the country. And we've all been sort of restricted to how we do things and how we work and how we can connect and interact with people. It's been really hard not having that social contact. How have you found it, Tom?
Yeah, well, totally agree. I'm sure it's been hard for everybody. In regards to business and networking, I think we should have adapted by now in regards to going from in person into the virtual world. And being truthful, I think it's been a blessing in disguise for us to experience the virtual world of networking. So at least we've got both sides of networking that we know how to do now, or should know how to do.
Yeah, I remember talking to a guest last year, Tom, and saying it. You know, if it I said to me last Christmas 2019, and going back a year now, that next year we're going to be having our birthday parties on Zoom, and not only you and your kids, but your parents and your grandparents will all be on Zoom with you. I'd have turned around and said, "Don't be so stupid." You know, it's crazy, but that's the reality of where we are these days, isn't it? And as you say, many organizations and most organizations have adapted, and most individuals have adapted. But we do a lot of profiling here at Action Coach, and looking at different personality types. And I know that I, for example, are very high S. That's very, somebody who really values and loves relationships and talking to people and building those relationships, as I'm sure you are. I mean, the job that you do is all about building relationships. And it must be quite hard for those people who really value that face-to-face connectivity to having to go on to virtual sort of platforms such as Zoom and other platforms as well, GoToWebinar. How have you found it, Tom? How have you found networking online?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Steve, and you've got the right person on the call to talk about that, because myself, I absolutely love in-person networking, and since I had my own business, I networked within that, and in different organisations that I've worked for in the past, it's all been in person. I think the transition, it took probably a couple of months to get used to it. I think more down to getting your mindset right, because you're sat at home, and some people may still do it where you're sitting there in your shorts and just a lounge top, and you're going on a professional business platform. I think you've got to try and change your mindset to this is in person, but it's just a camera in front of you. Because the thing that happens, and I found it myself, is at the start of going into the virtual world, I was taking it as a bit of an easy way to network, and being a bit lazy in regards to preparation, appearance, etc. And then as it evolved and you saw more and more people doing the networking, seeing and getting into it, I actually changed into the person that I should have been as a would in person, a lot more smarter and being fully dressed on networking events, to be honest with you, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I know where you're coming from, Tom. I mean, in lockdown to begin with, you know, you found me sitting here in my jeans and me, you know, polo shirts, etc. And it is a mindset thing. And actually, by, you know, putting on my formal workwear, even though I've not left my house today, it does give me that sense of I'm at work, you know. And at the end of the day, I go back into my casual civvies, whatever you call them, and sit in front of the TV. You know, it's that mindset. It gives us that separation, doesn't it? I guess on our call today, on our Lunch and Learn webinar, Tom, there's going to be two kinds of people, possibly. There may be more, but there's going to be those who've never networked at all. And then there may be, well, there may be three kinds. There's those going to be networked, but have sort of avoided virtual networking. And there are those that have only ever networked virtually. If you've done no networking at all, Tom, you know, not even put your foot in the door, where do you start? What's the starting point?
I think if you've never networked, a complete blank canvas, and you've not networked at all, you know very little about networking. I think if you're working in an organisation, firstly, go and speak to people who have networked. By chance, if nobody in that business has ever networked, then that's unfortunate. The next steps, what you'd have to do then is reach out to further connections. I think if you're, for example, if you wanted to sign up to a networking event, you've got your usual platforms. You've got your likes of Eventbrite, you've got Chitsa, you've got your organisations such as BNI, your global organisations, ourselves with Profit Club. I think reach out to those businesses that have a business focus. So, for example, if you type in Google business networking events in Birmingham, you'll get a whole array of events. That's the first step, Steve. You need to make that commitment that you want to attend an event. I think a lot of people are not confident with attending networking. So if you are a newbie to it, or however you want to phrase it, I think you need to experience it. But to experience it, you need to be prepared. Don't just rock up 2 minutes before you're supposed to be on the call and expect it to go great. Prepare, find out exactly what the organisation's about. For example, I keep banging on about it because as Action Coach, we are heavily part of BNI. But if you was attending a BNI chapter, have a little bit of research to use in that group. Just type it in Google, you'll find their chapter, and have a look at who's in that chapter, what people, what kind of focus they've got. Is it a large digital presence? And then just make a few notes and come up 10, 15 minutes before the event, get yourself set in your chair and relaxed. I think that's the best advice I can do, can give to the guys who are listening now, is just be prepared and relaxed.
And I'm just thinking back to when I first started networking, Tom. One of the things I found really useful was just to identify, you know, if you're going to a networking group and there's maybe, I don't know, 30 people, 25, 30 people in the room, identify two or three that you want to connect with and make a beeline for those individuals. And it's easier to do so, I guess, now virtually than it is in person, because you can identify them through their names on the screen and through their, you know, information they're sharing on the screen. Yeah. How have you found that as a tactic? Has that worked? Has that helped you ease into a new networking group?
I'm kind of split there with what you've just said. I did use that kind of tactic in person. Now we're in the virtual world. It's a little bit harder depending on how the networking event's set out. If you are broken down into breakout rooms, you're only in that breakout room with set people. You can message the organizer and ask if you can be in a breakout room with certain people. That's probably a great tip. If there is people that you want to be in a breakout room with, then please message your organizer. They're very rarely going to say they can't do that unless other people have got in there first. I think personally, yes, make notes of people who you would like to connect with, but don't specifically make a beeline just for them. The reason being is you may forget about everybody else in the room. At the end of the day, you don't know who's in that networking environment. You don't know their background. So that's why we bang on about one-to-ones after these.
Yes, I guess, you know, you and I, you know, when we first started working together, I didn't know much about your background and your circles of influence, as I call them. Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know. You don't know who knows who. And actually, by making those connections, they may appear not to be a natural fit for your organization and for you. But by getting to know them, which is what networking is all about, isn't it? You then, you know, can tap into their circles of influence, their network as well. But Tom, I mean, you've been networking prior to lockdown. You've been networking for a long time. How is it different online, apart from the breakfast, dare I say, or your salad at lunchtime? How is it different now to what it might have been before?
It's very different if in regards to obviously location wise and things like that. Depending on where you're set up in your premises, your home, then that's where you're going to be networking from. And I think it takes a lot of getting used to. For example, if people now are just going into the virtual world, then I won't lie, it's going to take a month or so, a couple of months maybe, just to adapt really. But I think the difference and the change has been the in-person experience where you can judge somebody, not judge somebody, you can kind of get a feel for somebody. You can have that conversation face to face. The mannerisms, their emotions, the way they hold themselves. I think all those things are very hard to get across on Zoom or any other platform that you use. So I think that's the problem there, Steve. I think that's the issue we've got with the virtual and the in-person that's different, that stops a lot of people connecting with each other, I think.
Yeah. And I've got a question actually, so I'm just going to frame it first. There are different types of networking groups, aren't there? Those that are a lot more formal and structured, such as BNI, Profit Club, etc. And there are those who, when I've been to them in the past, have been very much informal. It's just standing around in a room, networking, and you just work the room, as I would call it. Sort of meet and greet. In the more formal groups, and I guess in the informal groups as well, you need to have an idea of how to pitch your business in 45, 60 seconds. Whether it's formally or whether it's, when you first meet somebody, say, what do you do? Have you got any tips? A question that's been asked, have you got any tips for that 60-second or that elevator pitch, as many people know it, what can make it really, go from just average to excellent and be the best that you can?
I thought you was going to ask me to do my pitch then. I'm going to say,
well, no, Tom, feel free to give us an example, but tips that would help people.
I could possibly break down a pitch that I've done in the past, Steve, which may help people a little bit better. So,
absolutely.
For example, depending on the amount of time that you've got, some events only give you 45 seconds, some give you 60. Let's work on a 60-second because overall that's usually the case. So your first would be your intro. So I'm Tom from Action Coach Birmingham. I'm the chapter's business growth specialist. If you want to cut it down a little bit and you've got a 45 seconds, and take out that I'm Tom, because 9 times out of 10, your name will be on screen now in the virtual world, so people can see that already. And then maybe go into a fact. So, for example, for our sector, did you know that 70% of business owners fail in their 10th year in business, and for small business owners? Little fact, little nugget there for people to take away, but actually realise as well that he knows what he's going on about. That they're not just a one-trick pony. They know their stuff. And then go into a nice section where you're explaining possibly an experience that you've had last week, for example. So we worked with a client who has taken his business to 30% growth within the last 6 months of working with Action Coach. We did this by X, Y, and Z. So there you've got 3 steps. So there's your first 3 steps. Your 4th and 5th step, really, you should have a specific referral at least in there. So, for example, if we wanted to work with a construction firm, it would be, I'm looking to speak to Joe Bloggs, MD of Annex Construction, for example. Make sure you're specific. If anything, I can tell anybody who's listening here, if you're looking to speak to somebody, it doesn't matter how big of an organisation, a person, whatever they are, make sure you're specific. So you don't want to speak to the ITV studios. You want to speak to the MD, their name of the ITV studios. It does, and the reason I give such a big organisation like that is you never know who's in the room. And then to finish up on that, then sign off with something. It could be something not nice and quirky that people remember. One thing that I've started doing is, because at Action Coach we have a philosophy and we have an ambition that we want to make 100 millionaires in Birmingham. So I sign off with, that's Tom from Action Coach Birmingham. Remember, this time next year you will be a millionaire. Some may see it's cheesy, some may, but what you'll do is it'll be in their mind. everybody knows where that phrase has come from, Steve, don't they, really?
Absolutely. So just to summarize, Tom, and correct me if I got this wrong, I was just writing it down as you say it for our listeners this lunchtime. So step one, start with a great introduction. And if it's a shorter pitch, drop your name. Number two, start with a fact or a nugget of gold that people might find interesting to help them keep them alert in what you're saying. Number three, give an example of what you've been doing, or maybe a client you've been helping or something you've been doing in your industry in the last week. Step number four, be specific about who you want to speak to, who you're trying to connect with. And step five, come with a close, a strap line, something that someone will take away and again remember you by. So
yeah, correct, Steve. And maybe something on the close bit there. It could be a point of action rather than signing off. So point of action. When I say that, I mean I would like to get as many one-to-ones with all the members in this room. That's Tom from Action Coach Birmingham.
Brilliant. So 5 really good, clear steps there. So intro, fact, example, referral, close. 5 really great steps I hope our listeners can take away and use in their networking, which is fantastic. Tom, a lot of what we talked about so far is all about the preparation. And it sounds like, that is really key. If you're going to network, is taking the time you're investing the time in the networking itself. So invest some time in preparation to get the most out of it. I guess my analogy you wouldn't go and put an advert in the Birmingham Mail without proofreading it and making sure it says what you want it to say on the tin before you place the advert. It's the same. I see networking as a marketing strategy. Is that fair to say? And its preparation is key.
100%, Steve. You're spot on there, mate. It's possibly, in my eyes, one of the best marketing strategies that you can do and put in place within a business.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are various different networking organizations in Birmingham and nationally and globally. You've mentioned 1 or 2, but a number of these, Tom, we pay for, a number are free. What's your thoughts on is either better? I guess I'm thinking now out loud, what you put in, you get out, but is one better than the other? Would you advise having a mix of networking groups? What's your thought? Or put all your energy into one?
Let's break it into 2. So if you're just starting out networking, go and experience different networking events. The key to networking and doing it and being successful at it is finding the right one for you, or finding the couple that are right for you. If you're an experienced networker, then I wouldn't say put all your time into one thing. As the saying goes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I don't think you should do that. But maybe at the end of the day, we've got 5 days in a week of the working week. So really, I wouldn't recommend doing more than 2 where you're putting a lot of time and effort into. By all means, different networking events. Like I say, there is a lot out there. But it's between the paid and unpaid. Most events are free for your first visit. Most. That's not all, but most are free for your first visit. But then when you're going to pay, it does take a lot of consideration, Steve. I think you need to be sure that it's for you. For example, if there are high fees, what are you going to get out of that? What are the member benefits? I think that's a key. You need to note them there. And if you have got 2 organisations that you're looking to join, note down both members' benefits and see which is best. Try one. Doesn't work, try another maybe. But I think you usually get quite a lot of value when you do pay. That's because a lot of time and effort should have gone into the preparation from the host. For example, Steve, ourselves at Action Coach with Profit Club, ours is an education focus. So the value comes in the education section with us. BNI, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and that's where the cost comes in there.
I think any networking is to be seen as as I said earlier on, as part of a marketing strategy. And marketing should be an investment in your business, not an expense. It should be seen that way.
Yeah.
And I do believe that networking should be seen as an investment. If you put enough time and effort into it, you will get more than you pay for the membership out of it. Absolutely. Whatever networking group that is.
Yeah.
There are free ones out there, but you're not going to get as much support. Is that right? Is that fair to say? You're not going to get the same benefits out of a free networking group?
I'd say, yeah. I wouldn't use the word support, because if there are business people in the room, you'd like to think that, especially in this day and age, that we would all support each other. I think you're not going to get the member benefits like you touched on there, Steve. So there won't be, for example, for signing up, you usually get exclusive benefits, and that's what you're paying for at the end of the day. So those one-to-one sessions, etc. So yes, Steve, I think you're spot on with it. It's an investment, a marketing investment, because you can generate so much business from it, Steve.
Brilliant. And I've got a question from Roz here. She's asking, how does someone get involved in networking? So it sounds like Roz hasn't done networking before. So where would somebody start in networking, Tom? If they're, blank canvas, do they just Google networking in their area, or do they, what's the best way of getting involved?
I think, so if we're using it as they know not many people, business related, this is, I think you've got to start with Google, Steve, unless somebody obviously says go to this or have a look at this. I think that's the best way. Well, I'll touch on be specific what you're writing in that tab bar. Make sure it's to the area that you are based. So it's got to be Birmingham, West Midlands, Walsall, Wolverhampton, whatever. But be specific in what you're searching for there. Because if you don't operate in that area, what's the point of attending that networking event, really?
And Tom, I'm just thinking out loud now as we're talking. I know you and I are both involved in the same networking organisation, and we both operate Profit Club. We've got various different Profit Clubs. It's fair to say, even with our own network groups, Profit Club, we've got a ladies and a mixed group. Not every group that meets of the same organisation is going to have the same feel and look about it. I mean, we're both in the same networking organisation outside of Action Coach, and we have different groups that feel probably very different. So I guess what I'm saying is the importance, your view, and the importance of shopping around and getting a group that meets, you feel comfortable and meets your needs. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, Steve, 100%. At the end of the day, it's the same as if you was going to buy a car, for example. If you sit in that car or you take it for a test drive, it doesn't feel right. Should you be spending that money on it? Should you be buying that car? Not really. You may need to go away and have a real good think about it. Maybe take it for a second test drive. And I use that just because that's the easiest way of looking at it. In networking, it's exactly the same. Especially if you're going to a paid organisation, if you're going to be paying for that, you need to make sure, one, the people in that room are a good fit for you and you're a good fit for them, that you can bring enough to the room as well as take from the room. It's all about give us gain in networking, and that goes for any networking event that you use. You need to be willing and able to give to the group, and then your rewards later down the line, hopefully sooner rather than later for yourself.
And Roz is also asking, Tom, your view on referrals. Networking is all about referring people to you or referring people to other people and to receive referrals as well. How important is that? And I've heard the phrase used before, flaky referrals or confetti referrals. So tell us a bit about referrals and the importance of them, Tom.
Yeah, so it falls nicely with what I was just saying about give us gain, to be honest there, Steve. And flaky referrals, however you want to phrase them, confetti referrals, and then the strong referrals. So what we mean by that, Steve, and yourself, so confetti referrals are a bit drip drab. Really, you're just passing over somebody's details. You don't really know them. You've not dealt with them. You've not had a product or service. It's just you're connected with them on LinkedIn, so you think you can make a connection there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it can be great, and sometimes you may get that chance with that person. But what you need is strong referrals. And for Roz, in regards to referrals, networking is, and you've got to go by this. It's give us gain. So you've got to be willing and able to go out there and give referrals out to other members of that group. Not just go there and expect to receive, because it's like in life that you don't give to receive. You give. If it comes around, and hopefully it will, when you've got that relationship of know, like, and trust, you'll receive those referrals back, Steve.
Brilliant. And Tom, we've talked a lot. We've talked for 25 minutes, and we've just been mainly focusing on preparation. So you've done all this preparation. You've not physically but virtually rocked up to a meeting on Zoom for the first time. How can somebody make the most of that 20 minutes, that hour, however long that virtual networking is? How can we make the most of that in the current climate that we're in at the moment?
The first one, and to me, it's one of the biggest ones, stay engaged. You've got to stay engaged, Steve, and you've got to be willing to input, have some sort of input on the networking event as well. Okay, if you don't feel confident, then that's completely fair enough, and then you'll do your input later and after the meeting in your one-to-ones. But I think you've really got to make a push in regards to being engaged and show you're engaged. Three main things: camera on, sitting there and you're watching the screen. If there's a 10-minute presentation, you're watching that. And the third one, if there is things going on in the chat box, try and engage if you can. At least you're not having to say nothing then. You can type it yourself or just put your details in there to show that you are still there and engaged.
Yeah, I have been to networking meetings in the past where people have had their screens switched off, and I think, well, what's the point in them being here, really? It is about engaging. And I know, Tom, from my own experience of working with so many different clients over the last 12 months, that things do go on in the background, don't they? We have cats on computer desktops, and we have, the odd dog barking and kids and babies, all sorts. But I guess my tip is to try and limit the background distractions as much as possible. But also don't let that be a put off to going and networking. If you have got children, you are homeschooling, don't use that as an excuse not to network. It's really important right now that we keep those relationships and build those new ones.
Great point, Steve. Great point there, mate. Because and I'll just jump in on that one because sometimes you do need to turn your camera off. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Me personally, I'd rather have that camera turned off if you're doing something that the child's come up to you or whatever for 10 seconds rather than having to leave the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, don't be put off by having to turn your camera off, put it back on, and maybe just drop a message in the chat box saying apologies, X, Y, and Z if you really want to, but don't be put off by that.
No, brilliant. I think I'd agree. It's better to be in the room and engage for 90% than not in the room at all.
Exactly.
And we're all in this situation where we've all got homeschooling, we've all got things in the background. Many of us are working from home where we can, and so I think it is expected there will be the odd distraction now and again. So, Tom, we've talked about preparation. We've talked about actually being at the meeting, being engaged, making sure you engage in the chat box, making notes of what other people want and who they're looking for as well. So the importance, Tom, of once you've been to the meeting, what happens next? I'd love to hear your views on the after party, or, when you've been to the meeting and you've switched the computer off, what do you do? What do you do with all these new found friends and contacts?
Well, suppose, because we're touching on both points of being virtual and in person, very quickly on the in-person, don't rush off from the event. You need to stay around, even if it's just 10-15 minutes afterwards, have a quick chat and possibly get them one-to-ones noted in the diary there and then. If it is an evening one, for example, or afternoon, then by all means, if you've got the free time, go and have a drink afterwards. Networking, if that could be drinking, having a drink in a bar, having some lunch. It's not a case of you all have to go to a meeting and that's all you can do networking. It can happen afterwards as well when you're having that drink and relaxing a little bit more. Yes. But touching on the virtual world, Steve, so it's got to be follow-up, man. 100% follow-up. Within that 24 hours afterwards, me personally, I'd be connecting on LinkedIn with visitors straight afterwards. Or if you know their names prior to the meeting or got the details prior, connect before the meeting, because it's a nice way to engage and make that person feel comfortable as well, and yourself feel comfortable. But the follow-up afterwards, it's got to be within 24 hours. That's my personal opinion. And it's got to be, you've got to have a plan of action. So before you go to the event, we touched on the prep, you've got to be preparing that you want to get one-to-ones out of this at least. For people who have not networked before, one-to-one is basically getting a one-to-one conversation, just you and that person alone, possibly half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and really learn about each other's businesses and how you can help each other through the power of referring. So
the importance of that follow-up, otherwise you're really not making the most of the opportunity of being at the meeting, I think is what I'm hearing you say, Tom.
Yeah, 100%, because anybody can turn up to an event. You might not have a business, you might not even be in an organisation, and just turn up to the event, enjoy the breakfast and go home. Anybody can do that. The follow-up is afterwards, that's when you're starting the cycle of know, like and trust. You engage with that person. Whether that just be a connection and a nice message, it's great to see you at this networking event. And then you follow up a bit later on, but there's got to be some sort of interaction within 24 hours afterwards, personally, Steve. Else, like you say, to me, it's pointless.
And Tom, I wrote down digital versus face-to-face. Digital, I think, is for many organisations going to be here for quite some time. Yes, I can't see us going back to face-to-face, sadly, networking for some time. Is there any advantage in joining digital or virtual only networks? Is that something you've done yourself?
Personally, I know I've touched on it already. Profit Club, for the foreseeable, will be virtually, and I think it depends. It can help a lot of people, and it allows a lot of people to continue with moving and growing as a business and as a person, because the networking events are not just for the business; they're for you to grow as a person and develop and build relationships. So, I think it depends on the person. So that's the easy, short, simple answer to that. If you live in London, but you can still help and support businesses in Birmingham, then why not join a virtual group that's in Birmingham?
Absolutely. I guess in my mind, the other two thoughts that are going through is, I guess the virtual is probably going to be less expensive. You haven't got venue hires, etc. But also in terms of your time, you're not spending. And I know when I've been to networking face to face, it's sort of 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back through Birmingham. You've got a couple of hours. So before you know it, half a day is gone on the networking. And I'm not saying that face to face isn't important. It absolutely is, but there is some advantages over the networking online, isn't there?
Yeah, there's positives and negatives to both. You could probably touch on so many points for both of them that work and ones that don't, mate. But the biggest one is what you've just touched on there, is the time and travel that you're not losing out of your day to continue with other steps within your workplace.
Yeah. And I think what we're really saying is, there's so many pros and cons. Is the importance of finding a group and a network that works well for you. Again, some groups meet weekly, some meet fortnightly, some meet monthly. So it's finding one that you feel you can give the commitment to and that works for you. So Tom, we've talked about preparation, we talked about being at the meeting, we talked about the follow-up and the importance of all of that. Just to sort of really round things off. A question from Roz, are these webinars recorded so she can watch and listen at her own time? Absolutely, Roz. Just for anybody listening, either on YouTube, on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on Zoom, these are recorded. You can get to them on our YouTube channel, and you can also listen to them on the social media platforms afterwards. So great point. Thanks, Roz, for asking the question. So Tom, just to finish off, a couple of things really. Tom's top tips, the 3 T's. Tom, what are your top tips for somebody who's going networking? I guess 2 lots of tips. One is for somebody who's not networked before, and the other set of tips for somebody who's networking. How can they take it up a level in terms of getting the most out of their networking?
To keep it very brief, simple, however you want to phrase it, Steve. For the people who have not networked before, firstly, you've got to make a commitment, and to me, making a commitment is blocking a certain time out in your diary. So go on Google, type in Birmingham networking events, for example. Have a look at different events. Maybe look at some reviews. Facebook's a great way of doing that. LinkedIn's a great way of doing that. Or if you are using LinkedIn as the business platform, then why not just put a post out there saying what networking events do people recommend in the Birmingham area? That's probably the best way, because those events are known, but they're also being referred to yourself. So they should be verified and very good as well, you'd like to think. Touching on to make it a successful networking event for people who have not been networking before. We've touched on it today, Steve. I think it's a case of make sure you're prepared. That means turning up 10, 15 minutes before, being sat ready, get a glass of water, pop, whatever you've got, and distractions are out the way as much as possible. For people who are networkers and know how to network, to take it up that notch, I think your 60-second pitch is key to putting your own little stamp on that event, shall we say, but then you follow up. So 60 seconds, make sure you've got it to a T, make sure you timed it. And we're at Action Coach, we like to prepare, but we like to go over things and over and over, whether that be a script that we're saying to people who we call, etc. Practice it 10, 15 times. Do it in the mirror. Do it to a member of your family, and work out how it feels better. If it feels better standing up, then do it standing up. Nobody in this virtual room is going to stop you from standing up and doing your 60 seconds. But also the follow-up, Steve, to make it a successful event, follow up.
Brilliant. And just for those who've, obviously we've had a couple of people join us since you did your pitch breakdown, Tom. So for those who've just joined us recently or listening to us again, your pitch, break it into 5 key areas: your introduction, your fact or your nugget of gold or a bit of information about your industry, an example of what you've been doing, how you've been helping clients this week, the referral or specific person you're looking to contact, and then a good strong close at the end, whether that be a strap line or a phrase that gives some intent and makes people want to engage with you going following the meeting. So 5 really great steps for that pitch, Tom. Really do like that. Tom, as you've been talking, I'm reminded of this gentleman, Jim Rohn. 2 great quotes of his. One is, never wish life were easier, but wish that you were better, and work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And those just seem really appropriate when we're talking about networking. You know, never wish life were easier. We've got to go out and do something different. We've got to take things up a notch to make sure we don't just survive, but we thrive this pandemic. And that's about making sure we are better at what we do. And the second one is all about working harder on ourselves. You said at the beginning, Tom, it's all about mindset. And I think that's so important. Networking is about having that mindset to go out there and do your very best. Tom, you've also mentioned a number of times Profit Club meeting again this Wednesday. I know there's a 10 o'clock and I've got the 6 o'clock on the screen. Just want to describe to our clients, to our listeners, Tom, a bit about what Profit Club is, so that I do it with all our guests. I let them have a bit of a pitch at the end. So just tell us a bit about Profit Club for me, Tom.
Yes, Steve, thanks. So Profit Club, a lot of people, it's labelled as a networking event. I myself kind of change that up a little bit, Steve, because the focus of Profit Club is something that I've not experienced before, and as far as I know, it's not out there at this moment in time. So the focus is on the education section, a big chunk within the middle, which is 15-20 minutes of learning, an education section that will be, you'll be able to take things away from it that you'll be able to implement into either your business or the business that you work for. And when you implement those systems, strategies, little nuggets, tips, tricks, it will take your business forward. We are an organisation as Action Coach that thrive off business growth and growing businesses. And at Profit Club, the education section where you're put into your breakout rooms, where you're engage with other businesses from in and around the West Midlands and learn from each other. And I think that's key. You're networking, but the focus is on the learning and education and taking something away from the evening. So it doesn't feel like you're wasting that hour and a half that you're spending on the evening after hours, as a lot of people have said.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. And I think one of the other things I always take from networking, whether it's Profit Club or any of the networks that we're part of, but Profit Club even more so, I think, is it in this time of lockdown where we're, many people are feeling quite isolated in terms of the way they work, in terms of the people they can see in person and be with. That networking, that being with others is really important, isn't it? To be able to bounce ideas, to be able to get ideas, share ideas, and continue to build your business with other like-minded business people who are looking to grow and develop their business as well. I think it is so important. Yeah,
definitely, Steve. It's always great to have another pair of eyes looking in on the business and giving you a few tips. And sometimes it's good to have people have an input and say, that don't seem to work there. Constructive criticism, that's the best way of putting it. And we all need it sometimes.
Absolutely, yes. That critical friend role is so important. That's somebody to give you a kick up the bum sometimes. That person to give praise and encouragement as well. That's, we get all of that from networking. And I love Tiger Woods' quote. Another one I often use is, no matter how tough you think you are, you can't do that on your own. And that's absolutely what we're all here for. We're all here to support each other and make sure that our businesses survive and thrive into the future. Tom, I've just put your contact details. They are correct, I think, on the screen, aren't they? I just want to double check.
Yes, they are, Steve. Like I say, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, Steve. So if anybody wants to find me on there, they just type in my name on LinkedIn, and I'm sure I'll come up fairly soon in their search bar.
Brilliant. If, Tom, any of our listeners today have really valued it, but want to have perhaps a direct conversation about how networking works in detail and how it can benefit them, I presume you're happy to pick up the phone and have a chat with them about networking.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. Even away from networking, if it's just something business related, or even if they're feeling a bit down in the dumps and want to chat, then I'm always there as well. That's a big thing, especially while this pandemic's still currently going on, Steve.
Yeah, and I know that you're plugged into many groups, aren't you? Many networking groups. So if somebody wants to perhaps, get an invitation along to a first group for the first time, you're a great person to have that chat with, Tom, because you'll signpost them to the group that you feel from that conversation suits them, I guess, and get them along as your guest.
100%, Steve. I think that's key. I won't just say go to this one, because at the end of the day, if I offer a complimentary invite to any networking event, I'm not gaining anything financially or, as such of that. It's what I can give you. So it's got to be the best event for yourself.
Brilliant. Well, Tom, it's been really good having you with us on this Lunch and Learn. You said you wouldn't have much to say, but we've been 40 minutes talking about networking, Tom. It's fantastic. So, it's really good just to get somebody else's insight into how networking can benefit all of our organisations right now. And as I've said, as Thomas just said, he's plugged into so many different networks across Birmingham. If you want to go along as Tom's guest, he'll go along with you, invite you along as a guest, and you can experience it for yourself. So I would really encourage every single one of our listeners to think about networking as a credible, great marketing strategy for your business to help build those relationships, and also make sure you've got that support to continue to grow and develop your business. For now, Tom, it's been great having you with us. Thank you so much. I hope we can catch up in person very soon, but for now it's virtually. Thank you, and thanks to Pam in the background who's been monitoring our questions as well. And everyone, will see you on Wednesday, but we look forward to another Lunch and Learn Wednesday lunchtime, 12 o'clock. But for now, stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Take care, and thanks again, Tom.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks very much for having me.
Bye-bye.